Sriram ji, just a few words before you start.
Okay.
Dear friends, I have known Dr. Sriram Vajapeyam for about 1.5 years. It was in March. In fact, I remember the date also, March 18, 2023.
That's
March
amazing.
18, 2023, when I gave a talk at Niramaya Yoga Kendra, where some of you were there. Dr. Rampai was present at that session. At the end of the talk, Dr. Sriram Vajapeyam approached me. I did not know him. And he presented me with two of his wonderful books and requested me to go through them. One of them was Mahatma Yoga. In that, he has collected a lot of quotes of Mahatma Gandhi and has written notes on them. And it's highly worth reading, especially about ahimsa, how there is so much of debate these days. He is an author of several books and is keenly interested in exploring topics of interest to life philosophically from the point of view of social justice and other things. Though his background is a PhD in computer science, as many of you read in the profile that we attached while sending out this invitation, he is of late much interested in true education. Recently, I watched some 20 minutes video of his where he spoke at Amrita University or college at Mysore, and he shared some thoughts on spirituality, on Hinduism, on ancient traditions, yoga, and I was much touched. That's how I requested him to offer a webinar under the banner of FOI Forum. And that is how we are here having him this evening, going by India's time, as the speaker of this 269th webinar. I express great happiness at having Dr. Sriram Vajapeyam as the speaker at this webinar. I'm confident he will share such thoughts that would send us really thinking with thought-provoking insights he has about everything. He may not be a regular speaker like some of us are. He may not be an orator like some politicians are, but he is somebody I would say. I wrote to him this some time back also. His speeches have content, good content, thought provoking content. He is quite a thinker. That's how we are glad to get him. We thank you, Dr. Vajpayam, and over to you with those words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Swami Chidanand for that very kind and generous introduction. I'm not sure I live up to all of what you said, but I'm very thank you very much. So with those remarks, let me get started. And so first, let's start in the customary way, which is we invoke Lord Ganesha when doing any work. So Vigna Vinashaka Ganesha, right? But before that, I'll preface that invocation with a few comments. So the title of this talk is Beginner's Practice with Hinduism, right? With a science called Hinduism. So now, so in all good things that we do, we start with the prayer to Lord Ganesha, and in several shlokas, it is mentioned that that Lord Ganesha resides in the Muladhara chakra, which is the base of the spine of the human being's spine, right? So when invoking Lord Ganesha, if we focus on the Muladhara chakra, which is his residence, and we straighten our spine, alert our spine, and sit straight, and start any work, uh, the alertness of our minds will improve because a good erect spine alerting the spine will make us more attentive. So with that thought in mind, where we focus on the base of our spine, the Muladhara chakra. May I request Vibha Chaitanya ji to give us a short shloka on Ganesha, to chant a short shloka on Ganesha as we discussed offline.
Hari Om. ॐ एकदन्ताय विद्महे वक्रतुण्डाय धीमहि तन्नो दन्ति प्रचोदयात् ॐ गं गणपतये नमः.
Namaste. Thank you, Vibhaji. Okay. So now, already we are starting to see the science behind our Hindu rituals. So keeping the spine alert and straight, right, helps in our concentration. Okay. So if you look at what Lord Krishna teaches us in the Bhagavad Gita, in one of the chapter 6, I think, and shloka 13, which is what I had noted down in the slides. Lord Krishna says, teach us how to sit for pranayama, right? How to do meditation, pranayama and meditation. He says, samam kaya shiro grivaha. That is, kaya is the body, shiras is the head, and grivaha is the neck, right? And samam is to keep all the three of them aligned or straight. So when teaching how to sit for meditation, Lord Krishna says you should keep your head, body and the neck in one straight line, or aligned, right? And look at the shloka of Ganapati. We are starting it by focusing on our Muladhara chakra, which is the residence of Ganapati. And if you know the Carnatic music song Vatapi Ganapati Bhaje, right? So in that one place, Muladhara Kshetra Stitaha is mentioned about Ganapati. And in another place it is said he's a Pranavakara, right? Or something equivalent to that. Pranava is Omkara. And Omkara, when you chant properly, if I'm not mistaken, then your breath vibrates in your head also, when you chant an Omkara properly. So taking those two, if you start with the Muladhara and you think towards your head and towards the Sahasrara chakra, which is the chakra at the top of your head, that helps you align your spine, right? So when we chant the Ganapati shloka in the beginning of any good task, if we think of this as well, we'll automatically sit straight, sit alert, and we'll hopefully focus better on our work and do a better job. And so yeah. Was there a question or comment?
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So this was about the posture and the reason for chanting of the Ganapati mantra at the beginning of any task. Okay. Next, let us all do a very small. Those of us who are comfortable, let's do a very small activity, which is we'll take three deep breaths. And those who are familiar with Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, alternative nostril breathing, maybe we can do 3 rounds of alternative nostril breathing. Okay, and the reason for this again is that the breathing helps us focus our minds, right? So maybe I'll count to 3, and because I'm counting, I will not do it. But those of you who are comfortable can take 3 deep breaths or deep breaths or 3 rounds of Nadi Shodhana. Okay, so let's start with 1. 2. 3. So once again, the science behind this, right? In Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, Lord Krishna talks about concentration, etc. And towards the end of the chapter, he mentions that people who draw their senses inwards and then control their mind through pranayama, alternative nostril breathing, etc. Right? So you look at the Bhagavad Gita; it's again teaching you a science of sorts, right? Of the science of how to control your mind, and it's giving you specific techniques for it. So when we talk about the rituals that we do, etc., we should try to understand the science or get to know the science behind each of the things that we do in our traditions. So the first was Ganapati Vandana, Ganesha Vandana. Second was the Pranayama. Okay, now the third. So in a puja, for example, right, we start with let's say Ganesha Vandana. Then we do pranayama, and before we do sankalpa, we actually do Guru Namaskar. Guru, we remember invoke our Guru, right? We say Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru. So before the sankalpa, we actually also invoke our Guru, or we pray to the Guru, right? So there's a good reason for that, and so there I wanted to make a caveat emptor kind of statement, which I, when Swami Chidanandaji asked me to give this talk, I was quite hesitant because I looked up the FOI website, FOI Forum website, and I see there are hundreds of webinars. And so all of you who are attending must be, spiritually quite, for want of a better word, educated, I would say. I'm just, kind of a beginner, okay, kind of a beginner. Well, I've written a book which analyzes Mahatma Gandhi's spirituality and all that, but that's more intellectual rather than, experiential, right? Where many of you would probably be, sadhakas or people who have experienced a lot in spirituality. And in spirituality, that's what counts, not intellectual. Let me share let me put in my two bits of caveats here. Okay. So when Swami Chidanandaji asked me to give this talk, I was hesitant. In fact, I called him up and asked him, some questions about the nature of the audience, etc., etc., and he gave me a very reassuring thing, saying that don't worry, give it. Yeah. So after Swami Chidanandaji kind of reassured me that I could give a talk, I sat back and tried to think about when was the first time in my life that I had either taught or given a lecture or something. I thought back and I recalled that it was actually in third standard. Okay, so I'll tell you a small story. So maybe this will okay. So I hope you don't mind. I was studying in third standard, and one day during lunch hour, my class teacher calls me to the staff room. And she says, you go to the second standard, and teachers are all busy. We can't be around, monitoring the students during lunch hour today. We have a staff meeting. So you go to the second standard classroom and you teach them the poem that we taught you in class. And that poem was some Hindi poem, Chanda Mama Durke, something like that. Okay, for those of you who know that. She told me that. I said, okay. And I mean, that's third standard. What do you know? You do whatever the teacher says. So I went to the second standard classroom. I stood in the middle and I started teaching them that poem. And in the poem, you have to point at the moon, you have to point at the Chanda Mama Durke, whatever. Then you show them something about eating from a plate, etc. Right? So I did that and I went back to my third standard classroom after that. And then when I went home, I told my mother and father, look, today this is what happened. I was told to go to second standard and teach a poem. Okay, that was over. Now, I didn't remember that until this incident, the current situation where Swami Chidanandaji asked me to give a talk, right? I'm thinking back, I said, oh, okay, so my teacher in third standard has trained me a little bit to give a talk right in third standard itself. She made me teach second standard children. So I've got some training there. That is the first level thought. Okay, and this was at Sharda Bal Vihar, which is a school run by Ramakrishna Mission in Visakhapatnam. So we were in Visakhapatnam then. Then my father got transferred to Goa. So for fourth standard, I moved to Goa, where I joined a school called Perpetual Succor Convent, okay, which is a Christian convent, right? And there was a science exhibition at the end of the fourth standard. And so of course, fourth standard, I couldn't make any models, but some senior student had made a model of the Jog Falls, which is a well-known waterfall in Karnataka. Somebody made a model with using cardboard as the background for the mountain and cotton to make the waterfall. And in Jog Falls, there are four different falls. They're called Raja, Rani, Rocket, and Roller. And the class teacher in fourth standard at Perpetual Succor Convent, she got hold of me and said, look, you have 2 days of exhibition. You're going to stand next to the Jog Falls model. And you're going to tell people the names of the four falls, Raja, Rani, Rocket, and Rover. Again, I'm just in fourth standard. I said, okay. And I went and stood there. And I was telling the people who came to see the exhibition, the names of the four falls. And now here, the people who come to that exhibition are all parents of all the students. So they are all my elders. Okay, and here I'm a fourth standard boy and telling them the names of all of the falls. And I remember I even got confused between Rocket and Roarer, and I think I had interchanged them. And then one of the parents of the children, they corrected me. So that was the fourth standard experience. So I thought, oh, okay, fourth standard also I was trained to give, teach something or explain something to people. That was the first level of thought in my mind. Then second level thought came, which said that, hey, in third standard, I was asked to teach somebody younger than me, second standard kids. In fourth standard, I was asked to explain something to people who are parents, who are elder to me. Okay. So that means I have been, who know much more than I do. Oh, so then these teachers have taught me to teach people who know less than me and people who know more than me. Now I got a little bit of confidence. So if Swami Chidananji is in the audience, and all of you know, most of you, many of you who know more than me are in the audience, I said, okay, I can still try to explain things because the people who know more than me will correct me. And maybe there are a few people who know less than me, they'll learn from me. Okay, so this gave me more confidence. Okay, so now look at this. I started with level 1 where I got trained. Level 2, I said, oh, I've been trained to explain things even when there are people who know more than me. So okay, that means it'll be a learning opportunity for me. So that gave me a little bit more confidence. Then a third thought struck me, which was that, hey, third standard I was at Sharda Bal Vihar, which is run by Ramakrishna Mutt, which is you can think of it as a Hindu missionary school, not a missionary, but whatever, Hindu school, right? Fourth standard was in Perpetual Succor Convent, which is a Christian school. Okay. Now, both these places, the teachers have made me teach, and they taught me different parts of the same lesson. That, oh, you can teach people who know a bit less than you, and you can explain things to people who know more than you in the hope that they'll correct you. And one is a Hindu school, one is a Christian school. Okay, so then I said, oh, there are some common values and principles which are shared by these two religions, okay, Hinduism and Christianity. It's interesting. Oh, so that was the third level of realization for me, that oh, there are values and principles which are shared by different approaches to God, right? So I said, oh, okay, that is interesting. Then a fourth level of realization came to me, which was that, hey, all this happened when I was in third standard and fourth standard, and I am realizing all these higher level lessons only now after so many years. Okay. So it's taken me so much time to understand what my teachers in third and fourth standard had taught me. The deeper aspects of the higher level lessons of that are occurring to me only now. Okay. I said, okay. So this is four different levels of realization. Then I recalled that when I first underwent a Bhagavad Gita class, and that was at the Shivananda Ashram in Rishikesh about 20 years ago, right? One of the things that mentioned was that in the Bhagavad Gita, there are at least two levels of lessons. One is what you get, what is directly taught to you. Okay? And the second, there is a deeper lesson, deeper meaning, which you may or may not, at least I have not understood the deeper or the second level lessons. But so what I'm told is that in all of our spirituality, whether it is Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Bhagavad Gita, etc., there is the lesson that you get directly, and there is a higher level lesson. Now, I haven't yet learned the higher level lessons, but taking a cue from what has happened with my third standard and fourth standard lessons, I'm ready to believe that yes, there'll be higher level lessons, right? Okay. So that is the link to spirituality, which means that our spiritual lessons that we are taught from in our tradition, they're not very simple, just linear one level lessons. There are layers and layers of it. So this is where Swami Shivananda has made a comment in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. He has said that look, in the Bhagavad Gita, so not only are these different layers of lessons, but Swami Shivananda points out one more thing, which is that in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna talks in different places from different levels of consciousness. Okay, there are a couple of examples that he gives. One of the examples is about the levels of consciousness. I mean, I'll show it to you when I put out a recording of this thing because I don't remember it very well. But another example he gives is that there's a word called Saindava which is used in the Bhagavad Gita. And in Lord Krishna, when he uses, I think in the Bhagavad Gita, but Saindava has two meanings. One is it is salt, and the other is it's a horse. Okay, so and what Swami Shivananda says is that if you don't have a guru to guide you properly, you will not know the correct meaning to attribute to words, and you will not know the correct lesson to imbibe from whatever is being taught. Okay, so that's why uh, we, in our tradition, we invoke the guru even before we do the sankalpa for the puja. And if there's a saying, if there's a guru and there's a god in front of you, who do you bow down to first? It's to the guru, right? Because the guru is the one who shows you the path to the god, who makes you understand god, and things like that, right? Now, there's one very famous example of trying to understand spirituality without the help of a guru and then going wrong or misinterpreting things. And that famous example is Mahatma Gandhi himself. Okay, and I say it in a good way. I still consider Gandhiji as a Mahatma. In my book, which Swami Chidanji mentioned, I deeply analyze Gandhiji's spirituality, including his mistakes, and then I point out my reasoning for why he is still a Mahatma. So Gandhiji himself writes in his book that, look, we are told that we should have a guru to understand all these different spiritual books, including he read the Bhagavad Gita at the age of 25, but he says gurus are hard to find nowadays, so therefore I am relying on a book. Okay. But then he goes on to misinterpret, for example, misapply ahimsa, for example, and misinterpret the Gita itself, because he says the Gita is by a poet rather than that it's actually our real history of Kurukshetra and real lessons by Lord Krishna and things like that. So the point of all this is that in understanding our spirituality, it's very important to have a guru and have the guidance of a guru. So Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara. So Guru is Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara. Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Right. So we should actually start with that. Okay. Yeah. So when interpreting our spiritual things and trying to see if there's a science behind it or not, it's equally important to not discard something saying that it's unscientific without understanding from a guru the real meaning and the real purpose of certain traditional activities that we do and how it is to be done. Okay. Let me tell you what I'm going to say in this talk. Maybe if you are comfortable, you can close your mind and listen, eyelids and listen to it. Okay. I'll just state briefly what it is that I'm going to cover in this talk. Okay. So the title of this talk is Beginner's Practice of a Science Called Hinduism. So that means that Hinduism, I'm saying that Hinduism is a science, or that is my best understanding as of date. Okay. And uh, it is important not just to know the theory of a science, but also to practice it, right? And fortunately for us, the practice has been given in all of our traditions. The way we do puja, for example, the way we do different way we eat, even in our daily life, the different things that we do, right? So in this talk, I will try to give different examples of some things that we do in our tradition, and as I understand it, the science behind that tradition. Okay, and the hope is that the goal is that at the end of the talk, you should, if you already believe in Hinduism, you should recognize that there is a science behind everything that is done and said, and therefore, whatever you do based on your belief, you should be doing it in a proper way and do only those things that are uh, prescribed for you, and don't do the things that are not prescribed for you. On the other hand, if you are a person who doesn't believe in Hinduism, but you have more of a scientific approach, then the things that I mentioned in the talk should be able to convince you that yes, there is a science behind this Hinduism. It is more than a religion of blind faith, and maybe you will get into exploring Hinduism more. Okay. Yeah. So this is so. In summary, I'm going to give you some examples of what I think are the science behind the practices of Hinduism. Okay, that is the one sentence summary. Now, if you have kept your eyelids closed, you can open them now. So what we did in this third step is what is called a sankalpa, right? So if you look at for example, if you're familiar with the puja tradition, right, the way we do puja, right, the three steps we went through are very much part of every puja that is done. You start with Ganesha Vandana, you do pranayama, nadi shodhana, whatever alternative nostril breathing, nadi shodhana, then you do a sankalpa. Okay, and in the sankalpa, usually you would specify the goal for the puja that you're doing. Okay. Now, I'll give you a very interesting example of why such a sankalpa is important. Now, of course, in a very simple way, when we explicitly state the goal of what we are going to do, that itself will focus our mind, right? But there is more to it, even more to this, right? I wanted to show you a video of Deepak Chopra, the famous spiritualist and medical doctor. He had appeared on an Oprah Winfrey show in the US, okay, which is a talk show. For those of you who are not familiar with it.
Why don't you do it? Hold this string between your thumb and your forefinger. Just hold it. Rest your elbow comfortably on your thigh.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Yeah, rest it comfortably. I'll hold it still. Now, just while you're holding that still, mentally have the idea it's moving back and forth. Mentally have the idea that it's moving. Okay? Don't worry, it'll start moving, and it'll start moving wider and wider. See, it's already doing that. Okay? In any direction you want. There you are. Now, once it's doing that, just change the idea in your mind that instead of swinging it like that, it's going to start swinging like this in a different direction.
Oh, my
mentally.
heavens.
See?
So Deepak Chopra shows this as the power of the thoughts in our mind, that they even have effects on all the cells in our body, our muscles, etc., etc. Right? So that sankalpa is important. When you do a piece of work, you say this is the intent with which I'm doing it. Then basically in that example, what Deepak Chopra was showing was that it has your thought, that sankalpa has an effect on all the cells in your body and the higher organization of the cells as muscles, etc., etc. Right? So the sankalpa that we have been taught to do, it's not unscientific, right? I mean, there is a science behind it, right? So the sankalpa has an effect. And by now you see that the structure of the things that I have been mentioning, they are similar to what is done in a puja, for example. Right. So let's continue on this exploration a little bit. Let's look at other things that are done. We'll take the examples from typical puja that is done, but we'll also look at other examples. Okay. So next one, in any puja, we will chant shlokas, or maybe there are Veda mantras that are chanted. Right. So now let's look at why mantras are chanted and what may be the science behind the mantras. I'll give you an example. So when mantras are chanted, right, there is an effect. The mantras are specified because there's an effect of the mantras, right? I'll give you an example that a good friend of mine told me, and it is a story that is related to the Kollur Mukambika temple. And Kollur Mukambika temple is close to Swami Chidanandaji's birthplace, Kundapur, if I'm right. So here is the story. This story has been told to me by a good doctor friend of mine, who is a high school classmate. I have no reason to disbelieve him. He says one of his distant relatives or acquaintances, right, was a poor family in Kerala, and they had a son who, even at a very young age of 5-6 years, it was clear that he was mentally not fully developed, right? And being a poor family, they did not have the wherewithal to take care of such a child. So they took the son after his Upanayanam to Kollur Mukambika temple, and they talked to the priest there and left the son there, saying that, telling the priest, you please deploy him in your mutt's service, and please take care of him in the mutt. We don't have the facility or the ability to take care of him. And fortunately, the head priest of Kollur Mukambika temple, took over that child, 7 years old or 8 years old, and instead of putting him on to, let's say, menial jobs or cleaning the temple and things like that, he told the boy, look, your only job is to chant the Gayatri mantra 1,000 times, 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And apparently the boy diligently did that. And after a few years, maybe 3-4 years, something like that, suddenly the boy became mentally very good. He became very intelligent. He became normal and intelligent. And apparently after that, he started going around giving pravachanas. So chanting the Gayatri Mantra for that much amount of time had an impact on his brain, to the extent that was empirically. So if you're a scientist, you would look at it and say empirically, this is something that we have seen. It may be, one people may say it is one anecdote, but there are other examples as well, right? And if somebody feels it's just an anecdote, they can try it, right? So that is an example where the mantra has had an impact, right? So the mantra is not something that is just a ritual which doesn't have meaning or doesn't have practical benefits, right? There are other examples later in the talk. I will show you examples of mantra chanting, the benefits, the effects of mantra chanting, right? In fact, I recall one example right now. Okay, I have a good friend, an IIT friend. He's a scientific bent of mind, right? He's also into spirituality. And once when I shifted to a new place, he came over to my house. He walked into through the door, and then he walked to to a particular place in my house, and he said, "Hey, somebody has done some meditation here." Okay. And it turned out that I had just finished my puja and done a little bit of mantra chanting meditation, the Gayatri Mantra Japa. And he walked exactly to that, and that was not the normal time that I do it. And he came at a time which is usually much after the puja time, but that day I had got delayed and I had done it. He walked into the exact place. This is the first time he was coming to my house. He walked into the exact place where I had, sat and chanted, and he said, "Look, you have done mantra japa here." So there are people who can detect the effects of somebody having sat in some place and done mantra japa. So if you're a scientist, you should look at this empirical and say, this is empirical evidence, right? And my friend had no ulterior motive or no benefit to be gained from being able to detect that, right? There are even examples where I have personally, I'll give you one more example, right? So I had a spiritual guide, I would say, who is now no longer in this world, but when 10 years ago he was around, and he used to do a lot of mantra japa, and the morning prayer ritual would run to 5-6 hours, of which about 4 hours were meditation. So he had developed some powers, okay. And he had told me, I'm very much of a beginner in all these spiritual things. He had told me, look, you should chant the Vishnu Sahasranama every day. So for some time I was doing that, okay, and I picked it up from a book, and I think chanted once or twice in his presence, and I used to chant it every day, and he used to live 20 kilometers away from me, okay. And one day when I'm talking to him on the phone, he tells me, "Look, you're making this kind of mistake in your Vishnu Sahasranama, and you're missing these words. So look at the book and chant the Vishnu Sahasranama." I'm sitting here in my house and chanting it, and he's 20 kilometers away, and he's able to detect what mistakes I'm making and what words I'm skipping, right? So these are empirical evidences. So shlokas, Vishnu Sahasranama is not really a mantra, but whatever. So shlokas and mantras, they are scientifically based, and they have practical effects. So this is about mantras. Next step is chanting Veda mantras, especially according to the swaras that are specified for them. Okay. So I don't know how to chant Veda mantras according to the swaras, but you would all have heard Veda mantras being chanted according to swaras, right? And typically there are 3 or 4 swaras when used when chanting the Veda mantras. Now, why is it important? Let's try to look at it from a scientific perspective. Why the swaras are important, okay, when chanting the Veda mantras. And we would all have heard, like when I was in high school, my mother told me a story about how a Rakshasa wanted to beget a son who would kill Indra. For that, he did some homa or something, and he chanted Veda mantras, but he chanted the Veda mantra incorrectly. So instead of getting a son who would kill Indra, he got a son who would get killed by Indra, right? Maybe Swami Chidananji or somebody can mention the story more correctly. But so now, if you look at this scientifically, right? I mentioned that there are swaras or notes in chanting of the Veda mantras. So let's step to classical Carnatic music. Okay, and those of you who are familiar with Carnatic music would of course know of the legend, the late Dr. M. Balamurali Krishna, right? He has even sung Jugalbandis with Pandit Bhimsen Joshi and things like that. I wanted to show you a snippet of an interview of his. I'll summarize that here. Dr. Balamurali Krishna, he mentions in one of the interviews that he has figured out how to do music therapy, okay? And he has actually done it. Okay? And the music therapy, he gives a very interesting this thing where he says in music we have 7 basic notes, and actually further we have developed it up to 12 notes. But he says the Vedas actually started with 3 notes. Then in some Veda there are 4 notes. I think in Sama Veda he says there are 5 notes. And Carnatic music we have 7 basic notes, and then more elaborate we get to 12 notes. Okay?
For Veda also four notes. First Veda is only 3 notes. Yes. Then came to 4. Then at the time of Sama Veda it came 5. Yes. And it stopped there. We have created 2 more, 7. And then we have created 12. Like that it is improving.
And he says by singing the correct musical piece, maybe a raga, maybe a part of a raga, a patient can be cured. Okay? He says he had developed the theory behind it. He had learnt it.
అసలు ఏంటి మ్యూజిక్ థెరపీ అంటే?
మ్యూజిక్ థెరపీ అంటేనా, మ్యూజిక్ అనేది జారా కీర్తనలు, బాలమురళి కీర్తనలు కచేరీ చేయడం కాదు. మనం మాట్లాడుకుంటున్నది మ్యూజిక్.
ఓకే.
నేను మాట్లాడే మాటలో స్వరం, ప్రపంచం అంటే లయ, నాదం. భూమి తిరుగుతుంది, ఏదైనా తిరిగితే శబ్దం వస్తుంది, ఫ్యాన్ తిరిగితే శబ్దం వస్తుంది.
అవును,
అది ఓంకారం. ఆ తిరగడం కరెక్ట్గా తిరుగుతుంది, అది లయ. కొంచెం ఫాస్ట్ అయినా స్లో అయినా మనం అంతా పోతాం. అంత పవర్ఫుల్ మ్యూజిక్. అలాంటి మ్యూజిక్ని మనం మన హెల్త్కి ఉపయోగించుకోవచ్చు.
ఓకే,
హెల్త్ ఇంప్రూవ్ చేయొచ్చు, రోగాలు నయం చేయొచ్చు.
Gives examples where he has actually been successful with it. The most famous example he gives was that of the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.G. Ramachandran, the actor and the late Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.G. Ramachandran. He said he was very good friends with Ramachandran, M.G. Ramachandran, MGR. And at one point, MGR had gone into coma. Those of us who used to read the newspaper at that time, we know, we were reading about that, right? He was in coma in a hospital in Chennai. And what Balamurali Krishna did was he went to the hospital with special permission. He recorded a piece of music which he thought was going to help MGR. He gave it to MGR's wife, requested her to continuously play it on a loop, what we would say today, even though MGR was in a coma. And he went away to Kerala. He said he took a train and went to Kerala. And when he reached Kerala the next morning at the railway station, he said there were lots of people chanting Jai Balamurali Krishna or something and receiving it. And he asked them what happened. Then they said, look, we read in the paper, the headline in the papers today that listening to your music, MGR has come out of his coma. Okay. And Balamurali Krishna goes on to say MGR recovered enough to get back to his chief ministerial duties and also at some point traveled to the US to get treatment.
అదొక మ్యూజిక్ థెరపీ అనేది ఒకటి ఉంటుంది. దానికి ఇది పాడితే, ఈ రాగం పాడితే ఆ రోగం తగ్గుతుంది లేదు. ఏ రోగానికి ఎవరికి ఏది పాడాలో అది ఆ మ్యూజిక్ థెరపీ తెలిసిన వాళ్ళకి తెలుస్తుంది.
ఓకే,
అది నాకు తెలుసు.
ఆ రోగాన్ని బట్టి, ఆ సందర్భాన్ని బట్టి
ఏం చేయాలో నాకు తెలుస్తుంది. అది ఇల్లని నేను చెప్పలేను. ఎంజి రామచంద్రన్ గారు ఉండేవారు, ఆయన చాలా ఇష్టం నేనంటే. నాకు ఆయన చాలా ఇష్టం. ఆయన జబ్బు పడిపోయారు, పడిపోయి కోమాలో ఉన్నారు 40 రోజులు. ఇంకా లాభం లేదన్నారు. నాకు ఒక ఐడియా వచ్చింది, చాలా అలాంటి వారే చెప్పి నేను డాక్టర్ పర్మిషన్ తీసుకుని ఒక 9 నిమిషాలు మ్యూజిక్ రికార్డ్ చేసి వాళ్ళ ఆవిడతో, లోపల ఉన్నారు, వాళ్ళ ఆవిడతో చెప్పి, అమ్మ ఇది వేస్తూ ఉండండి అమ్మా, అయిపోగానే రివైండ్ చేసి వేస్తూ ఉండండి, ఆయనకి నా సంగీతం ఇష్టం, సంగీతం వింటూ పెడతారు ఆయన సంతోషంగా అని చెప్పి ఇచ్చాను. ఇచ్చేసి నేను ఊరికి వెళ్ళిపోయాను. సాయంత్రం ఇచ్చాను, ఊరికి వెళ్ళిపోయాను. మొన్నాడు పొద్దున్న కేరళ వెళ్ళాను అనమాట. అక్కడ జనం అందరూ వచ్చి నేను మెత్తుకుని మహేసుకుని జై జై అని ఏమిటంటే పేపర్లో వచ్చింది. ఆఫ్టర్ లిజనింగ్ టు బాలమురళి కృష్ణాస్ మ్యూజిక్
he responded.
Not only responded, he came out from coma.
Okay, excellent.
ఆ తర్వాత ఆయన ఉన్న నాళ్ళు కూడా నేను మ్యూజిక్ థెరపీ, ఆయన మళ్ళీ చీఫ్ మినిస్టర్గానే ఉన్నారు. చీఫ్ మినిస్టర్ హీ వాజ్ ఫిట్ టు గో టు అమెరికా ఫర్ ట్రీట్మెంట్.
And Balamurali Krishna goes on to say that he has experimented that with on other friends of his who were in medical difficulties. And there have been cases where people had a heart attack and they were told in a few hours, all that they had was a few hours to live, and listening to his music, they came out of it. So we have empirical evidence here, okay, of not just one case, but a few different cases. Balamurali Krishna has also mentioned that once he sang in Bellary or someplace where there had been no rain, and rain had occurred as he was singing. And if you've seen the famous Telugu movie Shankarabharanam, there's a scene where the Shankarabharanam, Shankar Shastri sings, invokes Raga, and rain pours down.
నాదోపాసన చేసిన వాడను నీ వాడను నేనైతే నాదోపాసన చేసిన వాడను నీ వాడను నేనైతే రిక్కరీంద్రజిత హిమగిరీంద్రసిత కందరా నీలకంధరా రుద్రులెరుగని రుద్రవీణలెన్నిద్రగానమిది అవధరించరా విని ధరించరా శంకరా నాద శరీరా పరా వేద విహారా జీవేశ్వరా శంకరా మెరిసే మెరుపులు మురిసే పెదవుల చిరు చిరు నవ్వులు కాబోలు ఉరిమే ఉరుములు సరి సరి నటనల సిరి సిరి మూవలు కాబోలు మెరిసే మెరుపులు మురిసే పెదవుల చిరు చిరు నవ్వులు కాబోలు ఉరిమే ఉరుములు సరి సరి నటనల సిరి సిరి మూవలు కాబోలు పరవశాన శిరసు గంగా ధరకు జారెన శివగంగా పరవశాన శిరసు గంగా ధరకు జారెన శివగంగా నాగానల హరి నువ్వు మునుగంగా ఆనంద వృష్టినే కడవంగా.
In Balamurali Krishna's case, it's verifiable. At least it's, I mean, somebody can say it is kakataliya, coincidence, right? But it cannot be a coincidence when there are 3-4 cases that he quotes. Now, why do I mention this? Because the notes of Carnatic music, okay, they are scientifically designed in the sense that the notes, the frequencies of the notes related to each other are there are specific values. Okay? And in Carnatic music, like in Veda mantra chanting, adherence shuddhatana, that is, the purity of the notes is is considered very important. You cannot introduce random frequencies of notes and things like that, right? Okay. So getting back from this to the chanting of Veda mantras, right? So imagine, so if music can have that kind of therapeutic effect when done properly. In fact, Balamurali Krishna mentions one other thing somewhere else, which is that he also has the power that, if you want to kill somebody, you can make him listen to a particular different kind of music, and that will have the effect of killing the person. Okay. So now come back to Veda mantra chanting. Okay. So Veda mantra, again, you have 3-4 swaras, and I would bet that they are designed scientifically to have certain effects. So if they're chanted correctly, they can give you those effects. If they're not chanted correctly, they give you negative effects. And one example of this is on Sri Venkateshwara Bhakti channel, which is relayed by, which is run by the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanams, right? They have episodes on Vedas, explaining different parts of the Vedas by Professors Mahamahopadhyayas of the Veda Pathshala of Tirupati, right? And there, the Mahamahopadhyaya mentions in one of the episodes that there were instances where there was no rain in Tirumala, at the temple region. Okay? They were short of water, and they did a particular Veda procedure mentioned in the Vedas with Vedic chanting, and before the chanting could be completed, rain came down. Right? So we should look at this. We should look at these scientific designs behind these Veda mantras, okay, and handle them accordingly. Because I'll give you another example. I have seen cases where, the Kanchi Paramacharya, for example, he says that, look, Veda mantras have to be chanted only by the people who have been, designated by our Shastra to chant them, and it's dangerous if other people chant it. I have seen in my own surroundings. I have seen examples where there are women who are devout, but maybe they're overly devout, and there are women who are gruhinis, right, married women, who chant Rudra and Chamaka, for example, who have learned how to chant Rudra and Chamaka and other suktas, right? Purusha Sukta, Shri Sukta, and all that. And the thing I've observed common between three, four, five instances, right, is that they may be married, but they are living as if they are sannyasinis. Right? They have a vairagya towards, grihasthashrama, right? And in some cases, they don't have children. And if they're in their house, they're grihinis, but they're running the house as if it's an ashrama, and things like that. So I see the effects when I look around. Okay. Now, scientists may say, "Oh, those are a few anecdotes. Have you gone and found, women who are chanting Rudra Chamaka, but they're living perfectly normally?" No, I have not taken the effort to do that, but I have not come across any such instances as well. And this empirical evidence also one has to use carefully, because you need that only when you don't understand what is going on underneath. Okay? If you know what's going on, I'll give you a very simple example. So let's say, Baba Ramdev's Patanjali stores, they sell dalia, which is broken wheat, right? And they also sell Pushtahar dalia, which is broken wheat plus several other grains. So there are 8-9 different grains in them. So suppose you cook dalia or you cook rice, okay? Then how do you figure out if the rice is cooked? You pull out one grain. If that one grain is cooked, you don't need empirical evidence. You don't need to sample all different multiple grains of rice or dalia to see if one grain is cooked. You know it's cooked because it's the same process which is applied to all the grains go through the same cooking process. So you don't need sampling there. You don't need empirical evidence. You don't need control. What they call control population, etc., etc. Right? Now, if you look at the cooking of this Pushtahar dalia, which has multiple grains in it, here you need to do a bit of sampling so that in your sample that you pick up in your hand, you get all the different grains that are actually, let's say there are 9 grains. You want each of those grains to be present in your sample. You check all of them and see if they're cooked. So here a bit of sampling is needed. Now, if you have some other case where you have 1,000 different kinds of grains, then you have a much bigger challenge. Okay, so where empirical evidence is required, where control groups are required, those are all dependent on what it is that you're testing and whether you know what's going on underneath or not. Yeah. So anyway, let me conclude this part about chanting Veda mantras with swaras by saying this much. Let me go back and mention one other thing about just chanting of Vedas. The example I gave of the Kollur Mukambika temple and the boy chanting Gayatri Mantra there. He got his benefits after chanting the Gayatri Mantra for a long time. Okay? But just to give an analogy, which is not a proof of any sort, right? If you look at the modern artificial intelligence tools that we are seeing, ChatGPT and all that, the fundamental architecture of the software has been around since mid 1970s, I think, right? But now suddenly ChatGPT got its intelligence, so within quotes intelligence, after it was trained on a large amount of data. So that the key is the training on a huge amount of data. If you take the same software architecture and you train it on a small amount of data, it will not develop that intelligence, or within quotes intelligence, right? So we are seeing examples in software itself where the amount of training data is important. In musical training also, we know cases where the kids are trained for a very long time and suddenly the musical abilities emerge. So the Veda mantra chanting also, if chant for a long time, I think then there may be effects. Okay. So that much for Veda chanting, mantra chanting and mantra chanting with swaras. There are several other things I can cover, but let me ask Vibhaji at this time, how much time do I have? I apologize for starting late. I can stop whenever you want me to stop by giving just a few more examples.
Yeah, you can take 5 to 10 minutes more, sir.
5 to 10 minutes more. Okay, fine.
You can take 5 to 10 minutes more, sir.
Okay, fine. So then, the next example I want to give is chanting mantras or shlokas, chanting mantras with swaras. That is the technical part. Okay, what I've talked about now is the technically correct way of chanting. You chant with swaras, right? The specified swaras. Shlokas, the Vishnu Sahasranama, you don't need to chant with any swaras, if I'm not mistaken, right? The next part is chanting with emotion, right? Bhakti Bhava. So in our tradition, Bhakti Bhava is emphasized. So whatever you do, you should do it with Bhakti, they say, right? So there's a difference between chanting a shloka or a mantra with the Bhakti Bhava, with the emotion, with full emotion, and chanting it just mechanically with the swaras. Okay, chanting it mechanically with the swaras also will have some effect, but the emotions have a dramatic effect. Okay, Now, before talking about chanting of shlokas and mantras, let me give you again another example, again from Deepak Chopra.
Because your state of awareness will influence how your food is metabolized. There was a study done in Ohio State University where they were feeding rabbits diets that were extremely high in cholesterol. And they found, to their amazement, there was one group of rabbits that never got the high cholesterol levels. After a while, they found out that the technician who was feeding these rabbits, instead of just throwing the food at them, he would stroke them and pet them and cuddle them and kiss them and then feed them the same poisonous food. But now, as a result of that experience of happiness, they made chemicals inside their brain and the body that turned the cholesterol into a completely different metabolic pathway, making the crucial difference between life and death from what kills more people in our civilization than anything else. So it's not just the food you eat, but what your awareness, what your consciousness and your state of emotions is at the time you're eating.
So this is a scientific experiment done in the US at a US university, and a medical doctor is telling us this, right? So that is the effect of emotions on the human body itself, right? On digestion. I can tell you, I know cases where people had terminal stage cancer. In fact, one of my own high school classmates, and she told me that she thought she was gone, but at one point her young daughter, school-going daughter, came and asked her, I believe, if you go away, what about us? What happens to us? Then my classmate told me that that was the time when she said, "Oh, I should live for my children," and she made a sankalpa, and then she recovered. She came out of it, and now she is, for more than a decade, she's been doing social service, okay, and helping people. So that's an example. I know of another case also where somebody had that kind of sankalpa, plus they did pranayama and all that, and they recovered, right? So we see the dramatic effects of emotions on the human body. Okay. Now the next leap, if you're thinking scientifically, is okay. This is effect on the human body, but if I chant a mantra with emotion, what effect will it have? Right? I mean, really, is it going to have an effect, or is it just some tradition that we've been told to chant mantras with emotion, with bhakti? Right? So I'll give you a personal example of my own. Right? A decade ago, there was a Daivagna whom I was fortunate to have gotten in touch with.
Because
A Daivagna is a person who is able to see things that we are not able to see, who is able to perceive things that we are not able to perceive. He was in this world at the time. He's no longer in this world. So there was an occasion where he looked at something and he said, "Look, you have to chant this mantra once or twice or whatever to get over some problem." And I sat in front of him and he said, "Okay, now you chant once." Okay, so mentally, okay, that manasika japa. I did that the first time. He said, "No, this has not worked." Then I tried a second time. He said, "No, you're chanting mechanically. This has not worked." He doesn't know how I'm chanting because it's a manasika japa. I'm not showing any emotions on my face. So, and I'm not a very emotional person. But after he said that twice, it was third time. He said, "This is the last time. Third time, you try a third time. If it works, it works. Otherwise, you face whatever is going to come at you." I said, "Oh, this is a do or die situation." Then I mustered up the maximum bhakti or emotion I could, and I internally chanted it. Third time he was able to recognize. He said, now you have done it correctly. Okay, so the emotion is there, and okay, now it has worked. So which means he's of course I'm sitting in front of him, but my face didn't show much emotion, I'm sure, and he's able to detect when I have chanted the mantra with bhakti, with emotion, and when I have chanted it without that and done it mechanically. Not only that, before that, once he had asked me to do some puja at home, and somehow I had done it with a little bit more bhakti than normal. And I went to him to check how it was done. He said, now you're okay, you've done it with bhakti. He's able to see that. Okay. So the emotions load the mantra with something. Load every activity that we do. They have their effects not just on our biological body, but on the effects that are registered in our surroundings. Okay. So after seeing all this, I am convinced that we actually now live in not just in a material world, but in an energy field. Okay, a good example of this is if you look at the ocean, right? Deep down at the bottom of the ocean, there must be fishes and other sea lives which live always in the water. They never come up to the surface. So my guess is they never know that they're living in water. Just an analogy of that is we actually live in an ocean of air. How often do we realize that we are living in an ocean of air? We don't, right? Only when there's a wind blowing, we figure out something. Okay, oh, there's a wind. Or if you're stuck in a stuffy room, then you say, oh, there's not enough air here. But otherwise, most of the time, we don't know that we're living in an ocean of air. So similarly, I think most of us, we don't realize that we are living in an energy field or ocean of energy. Okay? And the thoughts that we have, the things we do, they all have an effect on that energy. Let me give you just one more example of thoughts, and then maybe I should get to wrapping up. Um, I'll give you one more personal example, right? The Divagna that I would meet a decade ago, right? When something happened, a very interesting example, a thing happened. So I had thought about something that I would do something, okay? And then a few months after, I thought I would do it once a year at some particular time of the year. And I thought about it many months before that. And time passed. That time period when I thought I would do it had crossed, and I'd forgotten about that thing, about doing that thing. Just for hypothesis, let's say that I thought I would do something in June of every year. June came and went, and I forgot about that. Then after that, maybe October, November, sometime I went to the Divagna, and he asked me, "Hey, did you think that you would do something and you've forgotten about it?" And he specified this particular thing. He even specified that. I said no, because I had truly forgotten about it. I didn't even remember that I thought that I would do that thing. I came back. Then after a year, I went back to him again, and again he asked me, "Hey, had you thought that you would do something every year and you've forgotten about it? This particular thing you thought you would do everything?" I said no again, and I came back. Then I said, "What is this? This man has asked me twice now. I don't remember having thought about it." Then I sat. I tried to do a little bit of meditation. I sat in. Then after about 10 minutes, I recalled the whole scene where I had thought about what I would do. It flashed in front of me, and I recalled it. So look at it from a scientific perspective, right? I had thought about something, but I myself had forgotten about it. And forgotten about it for months, to the extent that when that Divagna reminded me, I could not remember it. Okay, but he was able to sense it. How did that happen, right? So these are all evidences, I would say, which point us to saying that, look, there is science between anything and everything that is specified in our Hindu tradition. Okay? I think I've given several examples. There are many more, but let me wrap up now. Vibhaji, should I be wrapping up now? Yes. Okay. Yes. So I'll wrap up in a couple of minutes. Okay. Let me give you 2-3 examples from science now. Okay, which also point in the direction that our Hinduism goes. Okay. So, for example, I think Vishnu Sahasranama, I forget the specific part where we say Vishnu is Sarvantaryami. He's everywhere, right? That concept itself seems difficult to digest, right? Because you'll say, oh, if I go to space, there's nothing in space. There's something in our atmosphere, but once we launch a rocket or you go in a spaceship and you go outside of our atmosphere, there's nothing there. Yes, we see the sun rays coming from the sun to us through space and all that. But how can there be something everywhere? Then you say, okay, there is gravitational force everywhere. But in school, we learn that gravitational force is proportional to the product of the two masses and is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them, which translates to, as the distance between two objects grows, the gravitational force decreases in power, right? So maybe there are some planets and stars around, and their gravitational forces are there in space, but they are all varying and decreasing and all that. But then a few years ago, you would have seen all the news about the Higgs boson being discovered, right? The Higgs boson, behind that, there was a theory that was proposed in 1964 or something like that. The proposal is that, look, there is a force called the Higgs force, or a field called the Higgs field, which is all over in our universe, all over. And unlike the force of gravity or other things, that Higgs field is constant everywhere in the universe. It is everywhere in the universe. It is constant, and that is what makes things have mass. Okay. So now that is a conceptual leap even for physicists, right? So now that is not proof that, of Vishnu being a Sarvantaryami. It is not proof, but it says the concept of Vishnu being Sarvantaryami is not any more challenging than the concept of a Higgs field. And the Higgs field has been proved now, right? And the way you prove Vishnu Sarvantaryami is different, but you cannot discount it anymore, right? That's one example. I'll just give you two other examples. And so the other thing we say is that God is not perceptible to our senses, to human senses, and to the human mind, human intellect. Okay, is beyond all of this, right? Now you take science. Okay, now in 1930 or so, a logician by the name of Kurt Gödel, right? He came up with this proof that logic can only go so far. It cannot extend beyond a certain limit. Okay, so everything cannot be, you cannot describe everything rationally, everything cannot be logical, and so on. And one famous example he gives is, he gives a sentence which says, this sentence is false. The sentence is talking about itself and it says it's false. So, or the other thing is, this sentence is true is the second example, right? We take the sentence, if the sentence is false, and you apply that to that sentence. Okay, if the sentence is saying it is false, you apply it to the sentence, then you will start going around in circles, okay, spinning, because you will keep getting contradictions, right? He gives that as a simple example. Then around the same time, about 100 years ago, quantum behavior was discovered, right? Where in quantum behavior, things like cause and effect don't really exist, right? That's my understanding. I mean, I don't understand. There are very few people who understand quantum behavior properly, right? That's one example in quantum this thing. And then second thing, there's something called quantum entanglement, where if you have two subatomic particles which are separated by great distance, you change one particle's state or position or whatever, the other particle instantaneously changes its state or position, right? That's called entanglement. So in science itself, the boundaries of science have been, people have been recognizing the boundaries of science. This is the only so far that normal science can go, and beyond that, and science has not even started getting towards making headway with understanding consciousness or atma and things like that, right? Okay. So in conclusion, what I would say is that my belief, so like you say, when you look at rice, a bowl of rice, and see whether it's cooked, if you take out one grain and say, oh, it is cooked, then yeah, the rice is cooked. Similarly, if we have some aspects of our traditions which are scientific, which we can establish, I would, as a scientist, lean towards, I would say, okay, I don't know about the other parts, but I would lean towards betting that they're all scientific, right? So in school, we studied about rational numbers, irrational numbers, if you recall, and surds, which are irrational roots of rational numbers, and so on, right? So my philosophy is this: now people can be rationally rational or irrationally rational. Irrationally rational people are those who say everything has to be logical, everything has to be rational. This is despite being aware of things like quantum behavior, which is not rational. Okay. So you can be irrationally rational, or you can be irrationally irrational about everything. You say there's no logic in anything. Everything, I'll right. But the correct way, I think, is to be rationally rational and rationally irrational. That you should know when to be rational, when to be irrational. That you should know when quantum physics applies, when traditional Newtonian physics applies. Right. So with that statement, let me close here, and again apologize for running over time and starting late. But I hope the talk has given you some sense of the science that is behind our traditions, and I hope it encourages you to go find more such examples. And the most important conclusion is, I would say, whatever things like Vedic chanting and the rituals that are specified, we should only, for our own safety and well-being, we should only do those things which are specified for us by the proper guru. We should have a guru, and let the gurus or the purohit specify to us. Do only those things that are specified. Things which are not specified, it's like prescription medicine. Please don't do it. I can give you examples of where, personally, I've seen examples where there have been malicious effects of doing things which are not prescribed. I gave you one or two examples in the talk. And this whole thing is a science. And it's like prescription medicine, so we should treat it in that way. So let me thank both Swami Chidananji and Vibha Chaitanyaji for this opportunity, and let me close here.
Thank you so much, Sriramji. It was a very, very informative. And being a Hindu, also many things many of us doesn't know. And to relate it with science was a very important point you have explained here. Thank you very much. Swami,
Thank you.
would you like to say a few words?
Yes.
Don't risk losing the...
Yes. As expected, Dr. Vajapeyam has brought out very interesting content, lots of examples, parallels between science and Hindu spirituality. In fact, about an hour before this webinar began, I sent to him a WhatsApp where a Japanese professor and a professor in Europe or America both said practicing Ekadashi fasting reduces the chances of getting cancer. So, well qualified professors have said it, and they have given the message in a certain way. In a whole year, if you have at least done fasting 20 times, in a year, 20 times, and each of those 20 times, I guess some number of hours they have said, 10 hours, you should not eat or drink anything. So, we have 54 weeks in a year, and half of it is 27. 52 weeks, I guess, so it's 26. So those who observe every Ekadashi, Krishna Paksha or Shukla Paksha, will end up doing this about 10 hours of not eating anything, not drinking anything. Though many of us take something, substitute something light, but in a more serious way. There is something called Nirjala Ekadashi also. So this is how interesting. It comes to 26 times in a year, 26 fortnights. And these professors of Japan and the West have confirmed that they say, in fact, they say that chances of getting cancer are reduced by 90%. That's so wonderful. So I don't want to give another lecture, but at the end of the lecture by Sri Vajapeyam, I regretted that I didn't keep a piece of paper and a pen. There were a number of points which were very thought-provoking, and you have touched upon uh, wonderful things about Hinduism, which have been there for many years, many thousands of years. Vedic chanting, music, and Gayatri mantra, and so on. And towards the end, you shared so many things about science by itself also. Someone rightly said, a little science keeps you away from religion, but more science takes you closer to religion. More and more we examine the discoveries of science, we begin to believe in something higher, which human intellect cannot easily comprehend. On behalf of all of you, I express sincere appreciation of Dr. Sriram Vajapeyam's presentation and hope to have you present again some other time. It was very good, and I'm sure it was a nice, fresh breeze of change for our audience. Your approach and your coverage has a different flavor, a different perfume. Very good.
Thank
Thank you
you.
again, Sriramji.
Thank you very
Over
much for
to
the
other participants. They may have something to say or something to ask. I hope Dr. Vajpayam has some more time.
I have enough time, but whether I have the knowledge to answer the questions, I don't know. But I will rely on you as a backup for me to
That's
answer.
fine. No problem. No problem.
Yes.
Over to others.
Ashok,
Ashok Sonpal's question.
Dr.
Please read it. Yeah.
Dr. Sriram has mentioned that one should only do the activities that have been prescribed. Otherwise, it could have adverse effects. What are some of the mantras one could chant safely without any prescription?
I think I will defer that to Swami Chidanand ji because I think I have some rough idea, but I'm not an authority on that.
As far as I am concerned, if you are asking me to reply to that, I notice that in this world today, there are orthodox views and liberal views. Going by liberal views, anyone can chant Gayatri Mantra, anyone can chant Mrityunjaya Mantra, anyone can chant many of the Veda mantras and so on. But orthodox centers would say many restrictions. But as Sriramji has said, it is good to learn from some people who have been into it before, rather than first from a book or from YouTube or some audio source. So, if you learn from somebody who has been into Vedic chanting, into some priesthood, from childhood onwards, they have been into these things, then it is likely that the transmission also is more faithful. Otherwise, these days there are musical versions of Veda mantras too, where they have added more notes than what was available. So that's all I can say here.
Swamiji, can I add one
Please.
thing? Yeah. So now, apart from which mantras are prescribed, this was an example I wanted to give in the talk. Apart from mantras, there are also rules about, for example, whether women can go to Shabarimala, things like that, right?
Yeah.
One of the very recent, very interesting videos that I've come across on YouTube, there's a lady by name, I think, Sinu Joseph from
Yeah,
Kerala.
I know her. I know her. I know about her. Sinu Joseph.
Yeah, so she has several videos where she talks about how just being in the presence of the Ayyappa, male Ayyappa devotees has affected her health, and she has received reports from other women of their health being affected. Okay, she also talks about the powers in the temples. The temple architecture is designed to produce some powers. So if people who are not supposed to go to a particular temple go there, they come back and they suffer from at least health effects and maybe other effects.
That's a
So
very
that
good reference you have made.
I would be,
I have known about her, and she wrote quite a big book on the Sabarimala issue. And though she is Christian by birth, she has great understanding of Hindu practices, great appreciation, maintaining her Christianity, Christian belonging. She actually works even for RSS in some social service activities and so on.
yes.
I think it is highly worthwhile to study some of her YouTube talks. She's an excellent communicator also. Sinu
Correct, correct.
Joseph, thank you for mentioning her name.
Yeah.
I
And
myself,
especially,
yeah, I hold
sorry.
her in a great regard.
Yes, and especially I would encourage all women, especially those who have a liberal leaning, to please watch her videos in the interest of your health. Right? So, yeah. Again, she also points out that there's a science behind our do's and don'ts and the way our temples are designed, etc., etc.
Correct. So Soumya Shri has said, yeah, so, and it has been answered. Soumya Shri asked, how can we get recording of this session? It will be on YouTube. All our webinars are available on YouTube later. Yeah. Shall we conclude then?
Yes, sir. Thank
Once
you.
more, all of us thank Sriram Vajapeyam, and definitely we look forward to another session by you. Think of some similar topics. Yeah, it's in fact both content and your communication have been very good and very nice. We are happy we joined here. I'm sure most people, if not all, are happy that they attended this. Some might have found some portions a bit difficult. That's bound to happen. With any speaker, there are always 30% are not able to catch up. If 70% truly appreciate and find it beneficial, we have done a good job.
Thank you very much, Swamiji, for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
Oh, yes.
And
Oh, yes.
thank you very much. Yeah.